And then he got all of our attention by saying, you don't hear this at donor conferences. He said, we don't need your money. We just need your expertise now to help us rebuild our country. And this Libyan determination that we've seen throughout this struggle to help themselves and turn to us when they see a gap is really inspiring for the donor community and makes us want to work that much harder going forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mark. Travis Gartner.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you to IMNI for inviting me here, for inviting IRD. Actually, much of what I was going to talk about has just been covered by Mark in terms of the situation on the ground, so I know most of you are here because you're aware of what's going on in Libya, so I won't go into great deal of recovering what Mark has just discussed. One thing I do want to touch on, it was mentioned in the introduction of IRD that I head up the Stabilization unit and that we have extensive experience in Iraq and Afghanistan. The stabilization is a broad term. It does not suggest that it requires civil military boots on the ground. We too are very happy to see that this is going to be an NGO, civilian-led effort under the UN and with U.S. involvement at every aspect. Stabilization, we generally work in conflict and post-conflict environments. It could be humanitarian assistance, it could be reconstruction, youth programs, media development. So I just wanted to state up front that stabilization is a very broad term. It is not necessarily civil military, and we do not advocate for that. IRD, as was mentioned by the ambassador, or by Mark, we were one of the first organizations into Libya. But I would like to reiterate, we too, what Mark said about the Libyans leading this effort. Now, we had private donations, and then we received a grant from OFDA to get our humanitarian response going. But we did that with one expat who's sitting over here, which is really unprecedented. And generally, you need to bring in these situations more expatriates or third country people who have experience in this. What we found was the Libyans were lining up to get around IRD to help, and they were volunteering, or they were not asking for, what's my salary? They were saying, hey, we're here to help. So it was a great experience, and we moved about $11 million worth of pharmaceuticals out to hospitals and clinics with 3 or 4 paid staff and volunteers from throughout the communities that we were working in. So just to underscore what Mark pointed out, this is a Libyan-led effort, and it was amazing to be a part of that. It also meant that we didn't need to continue with the humanitarian assistance, and our OFDA funding, like many other NGOs, it's gone away, and it's now time to transition into the follow-on. And I think as an NGO, from our perspective, now as I said, we've already talked about what the situation is on the ground. We're seeing local committees being formed to address community problems. Our team has talked about locals' youth running water trucks for free, moving water into communities that do not have it. Streets are being cleaned up by youth. Mosques are serving as community centers. Banks are reopening. Fuel is becoming more available. The markets, vegetables and fruits are on the local markets. So what the NGO community, what do we think needs, at least IRD's perspective, what we think needs to happen now? Obviously, it's very important that the disarming, demobilizing, and reintegration of militias moves forward. We have to have security, and I would say that's, in my experience in many different conflict and post-conflict environments, that creates serious problems if that's not addressed right up front. Revamping the military police forces and getting the police back on the streets, again, part of security. You can't do humanitarian or NGO or development work if you've got weapons, and there's quite a bit of weapons out there. Addressing internal divisions, Easterners versus Westerners, tribal versus urban, civilian versus militia. There's going to be the euphoria of throwing out Gaddafi is going to fade, and reality is going to set in, and they're going to need basic services. They're going to need to go back to work. Youth are going to need to go back to schools. and building up democracy, creating the institutions that basically, do, as the ambassador said, creating a new country. What can the NGO community do to help with that process? That's a huge task. How do we achieve trust and collaboration with the communities where we're working? And how do we put everyday life back in order? My experience tells me, in talking with the Libyans that we work with, a community action, grassroots level type program is needed. And it starts with fostering citizen involvement in the decision-making process, facilitating the creation and training of community action groups. By that I mean committees out in, there is no governance despite the fact that they had committees and militias. We're talking about working with the communities to help them understand how to solve their own problems, identify their priorities, determine their priorities and local development needs, strengthen their capacity at the lowest levels of local government, utilize government of Libya resources rather than outside resources. I think that we should play a technical role, a capacity building role, and through these community action groups, that is the most sustainable and durable way to approach this. It also enables us to identify challenges in the community, mitigate violence and extremism. It also enables the elected officials to learn how to deal with their own constituents. Some of the things that we are concerned about with regards to if we do not move quickly enough to provide the assistance to the people, if they do not see the services coming back online right away, which we've seen in other environments, is perceptions of social exclusion, frustrated expectations, unemployment, poor governance. There is going to be a lot of money flowing through the NTC down to the local levels. So these community action groups that we're advocating for, this process of supporting at the very grassroots level with U.S., UN, EU assistance, we feel is the most effective way of mitigating against these drivers of instability and bringing about what could potentially be an insurgency. That's what I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have about 15 minutes left for questions and answers. If you could please, again, line up behind the microphone. It's on the record, and if you could, in addition to identifying yourself and your organization, if you have a question for a particular panel member, you may direct it to them. Thank you.